No problem. Hi guys, welcome to the first general meeting. Go ahead and take a seat. Give the speaker your full attention. So I'm going to say this in the video that we're about to play in a second, but no phones should be out, no laptops, no homework. This is a really great opportunity to learn from Dr. Class. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and hit the video for you guys.
Thank you.
And my name is Megan, and I'm the media chair. Welcome back to another episode of the MSA 5 Grounds.
We hope you all had a great summer. Megan, what did you do over the summer?
I actually went on a mission trip with the MSA this summer.
I want to do that this year. There are 3 trips planned. It'll be hard to choose which to go on.
How about all of them? Now, let's hear a word from the officers.
Hello, my name is Sarah Jones, and I'm serving as the BMSA president this year. I want to start by saying how incredibly glad I am to be back on campus and surrounded by such a great group of pre-health students. BMSA is working hard to provide you with all of the resources and opportunities you need in order to be successful in your undergraduate career. An important change within our organization this year is our move back to in-person activities. There is nothing like being in a room with all of your peers, and we are incredibly grateful for this opportunity. In order to keep all of these events in person, it is up to us as members of BMSA to encourage safe and responsible gatherings. That is why BMSA is requiring masks at all events this semester. Masks are an incredibly effective way to mitigate the spread of illness, especially COVID-19. If you do not have a mask, please raise your hand and an officer will provide you with one. Failure to comply with our masking policy will result in you not receiving points for this event. Also, I would like to thank everyone for putting away all phones, laptops, and homework to give your full attention to the guest speaker. Now I hope you all get excited for what we have to offer this semester. I'll now hand it off to our executive board members who have been putting so much work into creating educational and engaging activities this semester.
Hi everyone, my name is Joy and I'm your service chair for this year. Hopefully you've already checked out the sign up form and started on your service points. Make sure that you check everything out on the Google form and sign up for all the amazing opportunities like tutoring kids, serving at food pantries, and sharing positions. So go on the Google sign up sheet and sign up for all events. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Natalie Munoz, and I'm your research and internship chair. I hope everyone is already getting those academic workshop things in. If you're looking to find some fun workshops to attend, I'll tell you about some great events that are coming up. First, we have 2 awesome workshops this week, starting with our gap year workshop this Wednesday, and our getting started in research workshop this Thursday. We also have our weekly surgical skills event every Sunday, which is a limited event. So that means if you signed up but you haven't been randomly selected, don't worry, you're gonna have plenty of other opportunities this semester. Next week, we also have our first aid workshop on Wednesday, which is great if you want a chance to learn basic first aid that you may encounter, such as first aid for seizures, heat stroke, fainting, cuts or scrapes, and so much more. The following Monday, we'll have a medical school spotlight, which is a great workshop to attend if you want to learn more about medical school in Texas and or out of state. So be sure to check out the event sign up form for more events, and see you there.
Hey guys, my name is Danny Gray. I'm the vice president here for BMSA. I just want to let you guys know about a couple things. First of all, I oversee the mentorship committee. We would love for you guys to sign up for one-on-one mentoring on the event sign up form. You go ahead and sign up, you get 5 points for that, and you get to hear all kinds of stuff about how to study for the MCAT, what classes to take, how to get involved in research. Also, BMSA is part of the Kaplan again this year, so that means discounted MCAT test prep, as well as other scholarships that they will provide for us. Also, if you guys scan the QR code that is on the screen right now, you'll be entered in the chance to win some school, as well as you'll get a free study guide and you'll be able to learn a lot more about CAP. If you missed that QR code, go ahead and see it for these at the front after the meeting and show them all the information. Have a great week.
Hi guys, hope you're all doing well. My name is Brendan McLeod and I am professional development chair for DMSA this year. Only a couple things to say. On Friday, September the 24th, we will have our first DMSA luncheon featuring Dr. Vanessa Castleberry. Be sure to sign up soon because just like the Chick-fil-A, these spots are limited. I look forward to seeing you guys there. Have a great week.
Hey everyone, my name is Tristan Ibarra and I'm your medical discussion chair. I just wanted to update you guys on some workshops that we have going on this coming week. On the 23rd, we have medicinal policy where we bridge the gap between medicine and law. This workshop focuses on malpractice cases, basics of healthcare administration, basic understanding of law for medical professionals. And last but not least, we have medical discussions on Friday the 24th at 7 p.m. Look forward to seeing you all there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Prachi Patel, and I'm the treasurer for BMSA. I just wanted to give you all a quick reminder that dues are due tonight by midnight. Be sure to submit the Google form with your screenshot of the payment. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, and have a great week.
Hey guys, my name is Harry, and I'm the recruitment chair this year. Super excited to have you guys join our organization, and I just want to say, have a great semester, everyone.
Hi everyone, my name is Justin and I'm the global health coordinator.
Guys, my name is Cynthia, and I'm your other global health coach.
We have a ton of workshops that are going to take place into every different facet of global health. We have global health outreach on Wednesday, September 22nd, 7, a mission trip workshop on Tuesday, September 28th from 7 to 8, a healthcare around the world workshop on Thursday, September 30, from 6 to 7, and a clinical skills workshop on Tuesday, October 5th from 5 to 6 p.m. And finally, a JHO workshop on Wednesday, October 6th from 6 to 7.
Additionally, we are also offering 3 mission trips this year, with 2 domestic trips going to the Rio Grande Valley and 1 international trip going to Guatemala this summer. If you're interested, feel free to come talk to either of us, and we'll keep you guys updated throughout the semester. Hi y'all, I'm Victoria, and I'm your voice chair for this year, Community Outreach Initiative and Service. If you're still interested in being part of COIS, we have tons of workshops coming up soon, so please check out the Google form. If you have any questions, just email me.
Hey guys, it's Pardees, your fundraising chair. There are a couple of events that are coming up. First, we have the Andy's Profit Share, which is on Tuesday, September 21st. It's a fun opportunity to go and buy a treat from Andy's, and it helps support BMSA at the same time. When you go, make sure to say you're a BMSA, take a picture of your receipt, and upload it to the Google form on the event sheet to get accounted for. Next up, we're hosting a fall theme pot painting workshop Wednesday, September 22nd. This is one of my favorite events that we do. You get to come paint, hang out, and we'll be playing the movie Halloween Town, so make sure to not miss out. Entry for the event is $5, since it is to help fundraise for the organization, and in return, you'll get 10 points. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace, your membership chair for this semester. Just a quick reminder that you need 70 points to remain active, 15 of which must be from your academic workshops and 15 from service events. Check your weekly email for updates on personalized point statuses and your information on upcoming events for BMSA.
Hey guys, what's up? It's George, your social chair. There's a couple of social events coming up. On Wednesday next week, there are 2 social events. There's a social workshop at 4 p.m. in room C231, which counts for your academic workshop points to really build your interpersonal skills. And then on the same day at 6 p.m., there's some small groups in room B105, where you can just chill and hang out with other PMSA members while playing some board games and doing some fun activities. Then on Friday, there's medical TV show night in room E234, where you get to watch an episode of a medically related TV show, eat some popcorn, and have a short discussion. Finally, right after this meeting, there's a post-meeting social where you get to socialize with each other and eat some pizza. And I look forward to seeing all of you guys there. Guys, feel free to reach out to me at any time. You can text me or email me. I'd love to be your friend and hang out with y'all. Good luck with any exams you have, and I hope to see you guys soon.
Wow, sounds like there are some awesome events coming up.
Yeah, I asked you to sign up for one to the event sign up form on the website. I can't wait.
Great idea. I'm going to go do that right after the meeting.
That's all for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to visit the website and follow us on social media at BMSA for reviews to keep up with all the fun.
Enjoy the meeting.
Thank you so much for watching. We're gonna go ahead and get started. A couple of announcements before we do. That luncheon that was mentioned has now been moved to October 1st. That's updated on the sign-up sheet and in the email, so just in case you weren't aware, that's October 1st. It's a great opportunity for networking and just to have a little bit of community time. So definitely sign up for that. Another thing, one-on-one mentoring, like you heard, begins this week with the mentorship committee. So they're really great people. They've been through all of this before, so please use that resource that's available to you. And of course, our Andy's Profit Share. Andy's is delicious, and we're doing that tonight. So go ahead after this meeting, after you go get your free pizza, go to Andy's. You can go get yourself a treat and get points for it. So yeah, without any further ado, Danny's gonna go ahead and introduce our guest speaker.
Hey guys, just in case you missed it, my name is Danny, I'm the Vice President for BMSA this year. So tonight we have a guest speaker, Dr. Tuck. He was raised in Glenwood, Iowa on a small farm. He went to undergrad and received his MD at Creighton University in Omaha. He did a neurosurgery residency at the University of Missouri in Columbia. He served in Army ROTC reserves and entered the Army as an active duty neurosurgeon in 2000, serving at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. He then spent 2 years in Iraq, serving as a theater neurosurgeon, caring for American, Allied, enemy, and civilian casualties during the Iraq War. Since his discharge from the Army, he has worked contracts all over the U.S., including Washington, Montana, Arizona, and of course, Texas. So without further ado, Dr. Ted.
Okay, just gotta make sure everything's working here. I'm gonna have to escape out of this and get to my talk. There it is.
How do you present it?
Got it?
I hope so.
I'm really honored to be here in front of you guys. It's been about 25 years since I was a student sitting in your shoes, and Danny asked me to come and just talk a little bit about what it was like for me as I went through this. I was asking a few of the students beforehand how much it costs to go to school here, and wow, it's just awful expensive for you guys. So hopefully I can give you a sense of what was going on when I was a student. When I was a college student, I had no idea I was going to end up becoming a neurosurgeon. And I even had less of an idea that I was going to end up being one of America's neurosurgeons in Iraq. It was a tremendous honor for me. And it's great to look back on a career of over 20 years now as a neurosurgeon. Hope to be a resource for you in the years to come. So I'm going to go over a few different topics today. The first one is just a little bit about my journey through medicine. And Danny summarized that, but I'll go into it in a little more detail. He asked me to speak a little bit about my advice for you in medical school residency and fellowship. Wanted me to talk a little bit about how to balance life at home with a professional career. And then I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the opportunities that I lost that if I'd have known about when I was in your shoes, probably would have turned out a lot differently. And then as well, I wanted to give you a couple of case studies in neurosurgery so that you can really be interested in what I do for a living. So I'm going to start out with a case study. This is probably something you guys have lived through. A 26-year-old male moved into a new apartment 2 months ago. Woke up the next morning with a sore back and left leg pain that was going down there all the way down past the knee. Felt like he pulled his hamstring. Anybody know what that is? Sciatica. Now, since then, when he walks, he's been tripping a lot. He's always dragging his left foot, stubbing his toe when he walks. Can't seem to pull his foot up off the ground. So he has what we call a foot drop. And for the last couple of months, he's been doing several things, restricted his activities. Hopefully it will get better by itself. Took some over-the-counter medications, got some prescriptions from his doctor, even went to physical therapy for 6 weeks, and this is not getting better. When I examined him, he had a thing called a flip test on the left side, where you're sitting on an examination table, you just straighten the leg out and it reproduces their symptoms. So that's called a straight leg raise when they have that. When you're doing that, you're tugging down on their sciatic nerve. And if their sciatic nerve is pinched, somewhere, then you reproduce the symptoms. So this guy has sciatica when he talks to you, and you're demonstrating that he has sciatic irritation. He also has weakness of his left-sided musculature down in his ankle and foot. The tibialis anterior is the muscle that raises the foot off the ground when you're going to take a step. The extensor hallucis longus is the one that raises your big toe. And so you can test that muscle by itself, and it's very specific. He also has sensory loss in that left great toe. And so that great toe is an area of examination that can tell you exactly what's going on. Checked his reflexes in his knees and his ankles, and they were normal because they're not really fed by the area that we're going to be talking about. And so the big thing that I always look at after I get their history, pretty much know what's going on once you learn the anatomy of it all. This is a picture of the nerve roots that are the dermatomes to the leg. And at each segment of your spine where you have a disc, there's a nerve that leaves there. Those are the nerve roots. And in the lower extremity, they come together behind your kidneys and behind your abdomen into an area called the lumbar and the sacral plexus. And those sensory areas go to the spots on the body that are designated there. So on the left side, you can see a front view, in the middle, a side view, and on the back, a posterior view on the right side. And you can see that this all is coming together with an L5 dermatome problem. So now he's got sciatica and he's got an L5 problem. Now we demonstrated that he has weakness, he has pain, he has sensory loss, he has a nerve root problem. And so this is a classic presentation of a person that's got a pinched nerve. And so the diagnosis here, an L5 radiculopathy on his left side. Opathy means pathology of, and when you have pathology of your nerve root, the Latin word for nerve root is radix. And so pathology of the nerve root, radiculopathy. One of the most important classes that I took when I was in college was terminology of the medical sciences. 3 months of Greek, 3 months of Latin. And it probably taught me about as much as typing taught me when I was a kid in grade school. 2 most important classes I ever took in my whole life. So if you get a chance to take a terminology course, it actually helps you an awful lot as you go through medical school. So here's a picture of what an MRI looks like. If you take a person and cut him straight down the center and he's facing to his left, you can see the nerves inside the spinal canal there. The spinal cord is that pointed area. Let me see if I can show you. There's the spinal cord. It ends in the upper lumbar area. And then you have these nerves that come out, and at each level, there's a nerve that peels off and leaves. And so if you have a nerve problem at L5, you know that they probably have a disc rupture between L4 and L5. So this is the L4 body, that's the L5 body, and there's the disc rupture. And the surgery for this is very simple. You just take the pinch off the nerve. So I downloaded some pictures here. See if I can get it to go. Can't get it to advance. I'm going to start it up again here. You got it. So here's the slide I was just showing you, showed you that ruptured disc. When you do an operation for that, the operation is done actually from the back of the spine. And we make an incision straight up and down right over the spinous processes, those bumps that you feel when you're pushing on someone's back. And you can actually peel the muscles off left and right to give you a picture that looks kind of like this. And so when you look down, then you can see the ligaments of the spine, you can see the spinous processes. And there's a ligament called ligamentum flavum that protects the back, the nerves from the overlying tissues. Do you know what flavum means? Yellow. And so the ligamentum flavum is yellow because when you look at it, it's actually really high in elastin, which is a yellow structure. So we take out the ligamentum flavum, and that allows us to expose the underlying nerves. You can see the arrow there that's pointing at the ruptured disc. And we just retract that out of the way and pull that disc fragment out of there, and that's the operation. Pretty straightforward. When you're all done, you sew it back up. A lot of these patients go home the same day or the next morning, and they're up and walking around feeling a lot better right away after surgery. They say in neurosurgery, you really only have to know 4 different operations: an L4-5 discectomy on the left, L4-5 discectomy on the right, L5S1 discectomy on the left, and an L5S1 discectomy on the right. It's more than 80% of the operations that we do in neurosurgery. And so one of the things I never learned when I was a neurosurgery resident was you actually have to be a really good spine surgeon. And if you don't like doing spine surgery, you're probably not going to like doing neurosurgery. So here's a little bit about my journey through medicine. I was actually born in Omaha, Nebraska. And when I was a kid, about 8 years of age, we moved to a little town that's a bedroom community of Omaha called Glenwood, Iowa. It's probably 20, 30 miles away from there. And it was a tiny little town, about 3,500 people. My parents were dairy farmers from Minnesota who grew up very poor. And my dad had a job with a phone company, so he was actually making some okay money, but pretty much lower middle class family. You know, just they can make ends meet, but they didn't have much money at all. As I was growing up, though, it was pretty cool because there was only like 100 or 150 kids in my class, and all you had to do is be a pretty good student, and you could be like one of the top 10 in your class. So it was kind of nice graduating from a little tiny town where you could get your name on the front page of the newspaper or be a superstar in the track team or the football team. And it was a great experience for me. I'm thinking I was pretty hot. Graduated in the top 5 of my class and got into school at Creighton University. Now, when I went to school at Creighton, my parents had saved up all the money that they could for each of us 4 kids. That number was $2,500. In those days, it only cost about $7,500 to go to school for a semester at Creighton, so I couldn't even really afford to go to school for my first semester. But I felt very honored to be admitted to this pretty prestigious Midwestern private school. And the only way that I was able to pay for it was to take a military scholarship. It was nice because the Army said to us, listen, if you can get into medical school, we'll pay for it. If you can get into college, we'll pay for it. And it was everything: tuition, books, fees, even a stipend every month. So it was a pretty good lifestyle if you were just willing to drink the military Kool-Aid. At the time, I'd been watching too much MASH, and I really wanted to be like Hawkeye when I grew up. And that really actually pointed me in the direction of doing the military scholarship thing. But it turned out to be the greatest thing ever, because when I graduated from college, I had 0 debt, no college debt. And then when I graduated from medical school, it was the same. I was lucky going to school at Creighton that in those days, they allowed a lot of the students who went there as undergrads, if you excelled in your group of peers, you got into the medical school. Probably about half of their students were Creighton grads. So I was a musician when I was young, played the bass guitar, played music in church every Sunday. And one of the Jesuits who was there put my name in and recommended that I be a student in the medical school. And he did that for 3 or 4 of us that all played together, and we all got into medical school. So it helps to know people in the right places. It also helped that I did research for the guy that was the dean of medical student admissions. So it's nice to have a connection with those kinds of folks. When I finished medical school, you're now 8 years into your education. I wanted to go and do a residency at Loyola, which is another brother college of the Creighton University, which is Catholic. And I could not get into Loyola Med. So I ended up matching at the University of Missouri, which is a very humble little neurosurgery program in a small town that's a little about the size of Baylor or of Waco. And University of Missouri is probably a college about this size. And it was a good experience to be there on campus because I was used to living in a small town, and you didn't really have to fight with all the stuff that I would have had to fight with if I was in Chicago. Some of my friends ended up doing residencies in Chicago and New York and Dallas and big cities, and just getting to work every day was a big project for them. So I was very fortunate that it was a 5 or 10 minute commute. Rent was cheap. The food in the restaurants was easy, a lot of mom and pop shops. And it was a great experience to be at the University of Missouri. One of the things that really helped me out is at Mizzou, it was a very trauma-heavy program. So I didn't really realize it at the time, but we became very good trauma surgeons. And when you're doing neurosurgery, people get in car wrecks and stuff like that, you're literally saving lives. If your operation goes well, the patient lives. If your operation goes badly, the patient dies. So you learn how to do work under pressure and respond in minutes. And it was just like TV when we were doing the residency in those days. But it prepared me a lot for my next step, which was to go on active duty. I happened to be in the Army in 2000 and was called to the boss's office in 2002. And he said, "You're going to be one of the neurosurgeons in Iraq when we kick off the war." So it was quite kind of a daunting experience for me to look at that and say, geez, do I even know what I'm doing? I got deployed with another guy who was from Walter Reed Army Medical Center, one of the biggest, fanciest programs in the country. And they don't do any trauma there. So he couldn't operate himself out of a paper bag when he had a patient with a bad head injury. But I was very fortunate after being at Mizzou that I was really good at doing trauma cases. And when we did a lot of penetrating head trauma and that kind of stuff, I was ready for it. I spent a whole year in Iraq from 2003 to 2004, the first year of the war. And we did literally hundreds and hundreds of craniotomy operations on penetrating head injuries and spine injuries. It's a tremendous experience. And it made me, I think, really a bulletproof surgeon to be able to take care of patients who were very, very badly injured and get them through that. It's quite an honor to work for the soldiers during their time of greatest need. I only had to stay on active duty for 8 years. But by that time, I'd already been in the Army for 22 years because I signed up when I was 18, went to college, went to medical school, did my residency. That's 14 years. And then after 8 years in the Army, paying back for the college and medical school times, I'm like 32 years old and I'm ready to move on and enjoy my life. As it turned out, the Army experience was really a good experience. The hospitals are well funded and you're taking care of people that are essentially really healthy between the ages of 18 and 40. And I really liked it. So after that, I went on to be an Army contractor. A contract job for the military is a sweet job. Any government contract that you can do, you're doing the same job that I was doing, making almost no money on active duty, except now they're paying you 6 times as much. And that's a great experience to start taking paychecks, 25,000 every 2 weeks home. Great experience. When President Obama became president, that was the end of the contracts. So I went into the Army after that as what's called a government servant. And so you're working as a government employee doing that. It pays pretty well. It's a good job, but I didn't like it because it didn't pay as well as I really wanted to at the time. So I was really motivated by pay when I was younger. As I look back, I'm not sure that was the right thing to do. Since then, I've become a private practice neurosurgeon, worked in a lot of smaller communities that are about this size. I like the size of Waco because you're in a community that really needs people doing what I'm doing. Whereas if you're living, say, in Dallas, there's a neurosurgeon pretty much wherever there's a Starbucks. So you have to decide kind of what you want. And that's where guys like me can really help you guys if you have questions about that as you're coming up. A little bit of advice for medical school residency and fellowship. The first thing I want to just emphasize for you guys is don't kill yourself with debt while you're young. I remember when I was a student, we could take out pretty much a limitless amount of money and buy yourself a car, rent a nice place, use that money for whatever you needed, go out for steak dinners if we wanted to, but a lot of the guys that financed that ended up having, in those days, $250,000 was a pretty big loan, but I bet it's twice that or 4 times that now by the time you finish medical school. Just keep in mind that when you're doing that, even if you finance it for 30 years, these are payments of like $5,000 and $10,000 a month for 30 years. That's the kind of money you're going to be spending on your $1 million house. And so it's not fun to have $1 million loans to be dealing with. You want to spend that money on your Ferrari and stuff, So I really would highly recommend, as you're looking for medical schools to go to, don't focus on going someplace that's really, really amazing and that really has a huge reputation, unless that's an important thing for your future. When I went to school at Creighton, it was paid for. But if I didn't go to school at Creighton, I probably would have gone to a place like the University of Nebraska at Omaha, someplace really small. And in those days, it was very affordable. And I think nowadays it's very competitive for you guys to get in, but just keep in mind, you have control over the 10 or 20 schools you're going to apply to. And if money's an issue for you, we used to say in medical school, what do you call the person that graduates last in the class? Doctor, yeah. And so the same thing goes when, what do you call the person that graduates last in the cheapest school in the country? Doctor. And really, you're going to learn most of everything that you need to know is going to happen in your residency. The medical school is going to get you prepared for what you need to know, but it's a lot like college. Like you can major in anything and you can still be a pre-med. It's kind of like that in medical school. Once you get in, it's almost impossible to get out unless you do something really bad. And so it's a lot of work. I'm not going to belittle that, but the medical schools really, they compete to keep their students in. And if they lose just one student, it's a bad thing for them. So once you're in, you really haven't made. You just got to stay in there and be in the 50th percentile. That's all you got to do. Another thing that I highly recommend is training where you want to live. I was from Podunk, Iowa, and I grew up, big city to me was Omaha, Nebraska. And so I wanted to go live in Chicago, Illinois. You know, that was just such a cool downtown area where Loyola's at and all that kind of stuff. But what I realized afterwards is that it's actually a lot easier to live in a smaller community like a Waco, just because you're not fighting for things like how much is it going to cost you to park, how much is it going to cost you to have an apartment, all this kind of stuff. Friends of mine who were in New York, man, they were living four to six guys in an apartment, a little tiny place, and I had a spot to myself. So there's something to be said for that. Another thing is when you're doing your residency, a lot of times you're going to get job offers from the people that you do your training with. So you probably will be asked to stay at the university where you're trained. And then if you're in the community, you're going to be moonlighting as a resident and as a fellow. So, you know, say for example, you were training in Dallas. A lot of times the guys in Dallas are going to end up working somewhere in the Dallas area or somewhere in Texas. Same thing in Phoenix. So I highly recommend that you start to think about the area of the country where you want to be. And if it was me, I would pick a smaller community to live in. You also have to decide early what you want out of your career. Some people, they really want to be the chairman of the program. They want to be an academician. They want to write papers. They want to teach residents and students. And I think that's a great thing. You have to decide what's right for you. There are other people, they really just want to be super, super successful. And they want to make a lot of money and they want to have a great family life. And believe it, you guys can make so much more money than you'll ever imagine. It's doable, but you pay a price. It's kind of like the old story about the famous piano player. Somebody listens to him play and they say, boy, I would give my life to be able to play piano like you. And he looks at the person, he says, I did give my life to be like this. So you will pay the price to do it. And if you have goals early on, what do I want to do with my family? When do I want to have kids if I do? Who's going to be the primary provider in my relationship, this kind of stuff. Those are the decisions that if you make them earlier, it helps an awful lot later on. Another thing is you only really get one chance to do a fellowship when you finish your residency. So a lot of times when you get done with your residency, for example, in neurosurgery, you can do pediatric neurosurgery, spine surgery, vascular neurosurgery, functional neurosurgery. Each one of those is a fellowship in and of itself. When you do your residency, they teach you how to do a little bit of everything. So you have the training to be able to go out and do any one of those things if you want to. That's what I am, a general neurosurgeon. I didn't realize at the time that I'm going to end up doing about 80 or 90% of my work in spine surgery. And so sometimes I kind of wish I would have done that. But you got to really decide if you need a fellowship. And if you're going to do a fellowship, start working on getting into that fellowship immediately when you start your residency. So again, you know, if you go to a residency program that has a famous fellowship, say for example, Washington University in neurosurgery, Every guy that gets out of that program becomes a chairman of neurosurgery somewhere. But I know a guy that went there and he didn't want to be a chairman. He wanted to be a private practice guy and didn't work out very good for him. He ended up becoming a pathologist. So you never really know how it's going to turn out, but do that fellowship early on if you're going to. A lot of people say, well, I'll go out and work for 5 or 10 years, then maybe go back and do a fellowship. How much does a fellow make these days? Anybody know? 60,000, maybe 90. But if you go out into practice and you start practicing, the average physician is probably going to make about, I don't know, 400,000 or more. And so it'll be very hard, especially if you're married and have kids, to step back and say, I'm going to go back and spend 2 more years of my life making 60 or 65,000, especially once you get that first Ferrari. And so that takes me to the last point, which is only do a fellowship if you need a fellowship. I really thought that I should have done one when I was in the Army, but I never just had the opportunity. I went to war. When I came back, then I was like this war neurosurgeon, and I was giving talks all over the country, and I was creating programs for training people in England and stuff like that. It was a tremendous opportunity. I should have been teaching a fellowship, but I never did one. And so I'm still a general neurosurgeon. And when it comes to me getting a job as a neurosurgeon, there are a lot of places that say, well, we only want you if you're a vascular guy, or you're a peds guy, or you're a functional guy, or whatever. And I'm never going to be able to do that. So now the next topic, how to balance your home life and your career. I think the first thing to keep in mind, and it's something that you should learn when you're in college still, is that medicine is a vocation. You can do a lot of jobs and make a lot of money, be successful, be respected and whatnot. But when you become a doctor, you sign on the dotted line that you're going to be focused on your patients. There are a lot of fields where you don't necessarily have to do that. If you're an ER doctor, you work shifts. If you're a critical care guy, you cover for 12 hours at a time. But if you do something like pediatrics, primary care, OB-GYN, my field in neurosurgery, once you do surgery on somebody, that person is married to you, you're married to them. They should have your cell phone number. They should be able to get a hold of you if they have a problem, and you should respond to them. And so if you're not ready to do that, you need to think very hard about whether this is the right thing for you. Because the vocation of medicine, you think about old-fashioned doctors who lived in communities and served their communities day and night. That's really the best doctors. Everybody nowadays is looking for a doctor like that. And if you want to be a good doctor, that's what you have to do. Another thing to keep in mind is you have to decide if you're in this for the money, the respect, or the gratification. So if you want to be a successful, wealthy physician, there are a lot of good business ways to go about that, where you're going to really make the money. And actually, most of the money is not made in practicing medicine. It's in the business of medicine. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. Sometimes people, all they really want to do is be respected. Their family, everybody in their family is a doctor. They got to be a doctor like them. Or, you know, in my little town, the guy who was the most respectable person that I knew in my town was the physician, family doctor that took care of all of us. And, you know, I think that if you go into academics, a lot of people are trying to be famous. They want to be known. They want to be remembered. And if that's something that's important to you, then there's a pathway to that. And you have to realize it early so that you can follow that path. But, you know, I kind of got shoved around when I was a resident and thinking, well, geez, maybe I should be a great brain surgeon, or maybe I should teach residents and work in an academic hospital. And I realized when I started doing stuff like that, that it wasn't really the thing for me. And then the last thing, which I think is the best way to practice medicine, is to do it for the gratification. I'm at a point in my career right now where you really don't, I mean, you can pay for all you want. You don't need money anymore. You saved enough money that you could retire today if you want to. And so now you really are doing it for the gratification of helping people, which is probably what a lot of you guys are in your pre-med classes for. And that's actually the best kind of medicine, to have somebody come to you. You're the expert that can really help them with their problem. You know more about your topic than anybody else in the whole community, or maybe only 1 or 2 other people. And when you do something right and they have a good outcome, you'll change a person's life. And that's very, very gratifying to do something like that. Save people's lives, change their lives for the better, give them better quality. Another thing to keep about in balance is to figure out how much and what kind of free time you're going to need. There are a lot of people that they need blocks of time off. For example, they want to be able to travel in Europe. They need 2 weeks at a time off. And I know people who live in the Bahamas and then for 2 weeks, and then they come up to the States and they work for 2 weeks, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And if they want to take vacation overseas, they can do that. So there are other people that they have to take their time off in little pieces. So when you look at my job, I have to round every day, Saturdays and Sundays, whether I'm on call or off call, I still have people in the hospital. So you're at the hospital every day. And if you want to spend some time with your family, you're going to be sneaking off to get some lunch or have dinner with them or figure out a time when you're not on call, because it always happens when you're a resident and when you're a staff guy, you're going to be looking forward to going to a concert or something like that. You're on call that night, and the minute you sit down, your page goes off and you got to leave. If I had $1 for every time that happened to me as a resident, I wouldn't have had to go into practice. But I think if you think about the kind of free time you need, some people like to work Monday through Friday, they have the weekends off. Some people like to work shifts, 12 on, 12 off. There are a lot of jobs nowadays where you can work shifts and you only have to work maybe 10 shifts a month. That means you're off 20 days a month, pretty sweet. And so I think that whole way of lifestyle, you're going to be able to sort of see as you do your time as a medical student, you'll be able to see the way you can work your life around that. So if you're going to get married, if you're going to have kids, how am I going to be able to get the kids to school? How am I going to be able to be there for their games after school? In neurosurgery, my job starts at 7. And if I'm working, sometimes it doesn't get over till 8 or 9 o'clock. And it's just the way it is. Your job has to come first for that. But in neurosurgery, it's a very job focused position. And a lot of jobs are not like that. It's just a job that you do to make money so that you can live your life. And so, for example, if you want to be a pathologist, patients don't care what time you come to work. So, I mean, you can do a lot of jobs where you have much more control of your lifestyle. And then that sort of leads into this statement that the specialty that you choose is going to dictate how much you work and what kind of work you do. And so you'll start to see, like, for example, I thought I really like the nervous system. Maybe I'll become a neurologist. Then I realized all the neurologists did was treat stuff that they could never fix. They're just managing stuff. They never fixed anything. But the first time I saw a guy clip an aneurysm, the patient was cured. I was like, man, this is for me. I like to fix stuff and I like to work with my hands. So that definitely was a choice that I made. I needed to be a surgeon and not a person that did medical management of things. But there are a lot of other people, they like to think about stuff. They like to solve problems. They don't want to be stressed out about having to do surgery or getting called in the middle of the night. And they definitely don't want to take care of people that are acutely ill. They want to have their own time off. And so neurosurgery is not the field for that. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the opportunities that I lost. There's only a few of them here. One of the things is I wished I'd have done a fellowship. And so when I was talking earlier about doing fellowships, you start doing your residency rotations, you're going to start to gravitate towards the stuff that is really interesting to you. It's very important that you don't gravitate towards the stuff that's interesting to somebody else that you admire. Make sure that it's for you and not them, because once you finish, you're out there doing that. And after a while, any cool field becomes a job where you just go to work every day, do your thing, go home at night, try to salvage some time with your family, try to stay skinny, you know how the deal is. Another thing I wished I'd done is get a master's degree in healthcare administration. So if you want to be a successful private practice doctor, you need to know how to run a business. And so one of the best pre-med majors is to actually be a business major. The best students that I ever knew in medical school were people that did nothing at all that was related to medicine. Like I studied chemistry, and I was really good in biochem and stuff like that, but like that's just one little part of what you're taking tests on as a med student. I had a good friend who was a history major, and it was really hard for him to take all these medical courses. But man, he was a really well-rounded character, and I really admired him. He became a pediatrician, and he was a great doctor. But I kind of wish that I got that master's degree, because if I would have gone out and ran a practice of my own, then I wouldn't have to be an employed physician, which is what I do now. I'm an employed doctor because I don't know what the hell to do to run a business. And you're dealing with some pretty big money. A lot of times dealing with some employees that really need you. And if you do a bad job as a doctor, like probably 60 or 80% of the doctors I've known, then you're going to have bad financial outcomes, make bad choices, do things that were never going to work in the first place. And if you just had a little bit of business smarts, you probably would be able to know better. The best thing you can do if you're not going to get a degree like that is to surround yourself when you're coming up with people that are successful business people and have them teach you what they know about business. Very good. The orthopedic surgeons are very good about that. They invest early in the places where they're going to do surgeries. They're going to get kickbacks from their surgery centers and all this kind of stuff. And the ortho guys really have a good way of teaching each other the business of medicine. Another thing I wished I had done was start saving more money earlier in life. If you don't already have a life insurance policy that's called a whole life policy, you should buy it. Because you're probably not going to die by the time you're done giving into the policy. And then about the time you're retiring, it starts giving you back $5,000 or $10,000 a month. That's a really nice way to live your life. Of course, if you're married and you got kids, then you really need to have that, because if you die, they need that $1 million or $5 or $10 million policy to get squared away. So if you haven't already started saving a little bit of money, 10%, 20% of what you're doing, you really should learn how to do that. Talk to your nearest business major to help you out. Another thing I wished I would have done is devoted more attention to my own health. When I was an Army guy, you were forced to be in shape. You had a weight standard, you had to be able to run 2 miles in a certain period of time, et cetera. So we were pretty lean and mean. I was miserable when I was in Iraq. We lived in the worst heat and some of the most extreme discomfort I've ever experienced. And I said, when I get back, every time I drink something, it's going to be loaded with ice cubes, because I haven't seen an ice cube in 3 months. Every time I get back, if I can have a steak and potatoes, I'm going to eat a steak and potatoes. And before you know it, you're 310 pounds. So I've actually lost about 50, 60, 70 pounds. And I'm still trying to get back down to where I can. I'll tell you, it's a lot harder to lose the weight than it is to put it on. So those things like jogging, walking, participating in sports programs, keep doing that stuff as you grow older, and you'll enjoy your life a lot better. Another thing I wish I had done was maintain the hobbies that I developed when I was young. When I was 14, I was playing in a garage band. When I was 16, I was a marching bass player with an amplifier rolling next to me that someone else pushed. And when I was in college and medical school, I played in bands in coffee shops and made money. That's one of the ways I made cash. And played in church and played on some record albums and did a whole bunch of stuff. And so it was great to be a bass player. But once I got in my residency, I just kind of didn't do it anymore. And then it's very hard to get back into it once you get busy. Similarly, I used to run marathons. Can you believe it? I ran a marathon every year when I graduated from high school. So after 8, 9 marathons once a year, got busy in residency, quit running, and probably a good thing for my knees and hips, but didn't help my belly too much. So I would highly recommend that you find a way to continue the things that you enjoy now in life, whether that be going out with friends, playing cards, playing board games, whatever it is you like to do, keep on doing it, and don't get too focused on medicine. Pretty deep. Can't believe you guys actually sat through that. I would have been gone a long time ago. So here's the second case study. This is a twist on radiculopathy. 52-year-old guy is a carpet layer, and he developed severe pain in his right hand with weakness and numbness. These guys, if you've ever seen carpet layers, they do a lot of pounding on stuff and a lot of hammering and a lot of beating stuff with their knees and elbows and wrists. And so this happened suddenly, and he showed up in the ER after a day of hard work. He was having difficulty with gripping his tools and tucking the carpet the way he's supposed to. Lots of pain in his forearm, wrist, and hand. What does that sound like? Too early to know. Developed numbness, rapidly involving his first 4 fingers: thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger. The funny thing about it was his small finger wasn't involved. So he went to the ER, the ER doctor called him up, he says, you want to admit this guy, or should I just set him up in your office? And so if you take your neurosurgery boards and you get that presentation, if you don't get this answer right, you fail your boards. This is a surgical emergency. So the guy comes in. If you ever get a chance on a test to say, you're going to send him to your office and see him the next day, or you're going to go see him in the ER, the answer is always, I go to the ER and see the patient. There are some times when you can cut corners, but the worst doctors are the ones that do it all the time. So you go to the ER and you examine this guy, and his sensation's diminished in his right thumb, index, and middle finger, and half of his ring finger. You touch the side that's nearest middle finger, and it's numb. Touch the other side, it's normal. So what's up with that? Splits, the sensation splits the finger. Another thing is he was weak. He's trying to grip. So there are some muscles involved in those nerves. He had a negative Sperling's maneuver. Sperling maneuver, you turn toward the side where the arm is bad and you push the neck down and back. If you got a pinched nerve in your neck, the Sperling maneuver will reproduce it just like a flip test did in your legs. But his is negative. So what's that telling you? It ain't a pinched nerve in the neck. The sensory loss spares the right radial nerve distribution, and we're going to look at that. So keep in mind that his radial nerve is functioning normally. So here's the dermatomes of the hand. All those low back, lumbar nerves go to the legs and feet. All the ones in the neck go out to the arms and the hand. And so if you look at this, he's got sensory loss at C6 and C7, but not C8. So in medicine, you always try to keep things simple. It's probably not involving two nerve roots. So it's got to be somewhere outside of that. And so when you think about it, when you're a carpet layer, do you do things in your shoulder to hurt your brachial plexus? Not so much. Maybe you carry a roll of something on your shoulder. Do you hurt your elbow? Sure. Can you hurt your hand? Sure. And so now you're thinking about a peripheral nerve problem. This is not a nerve root thing. So now you got to think about the dermatomes that are related to not the nerve roots, the peripheral nerves. And so now you can see on this picture, the median nerve is the one that has all that sensation that I was talking about. The median nerve comes down the front of the elbow. You know the name of this nerve on the back, the funny bone? Ulnar nerve. That's the one that gives you sensation to the small part of your hand, or to the medial part. And the interesting thing is, on this picture, you can see the back of the hand. The radial nerve gives you sensation on the back of your hand. Whereas if you had a nerve root problem, it would give you sensory loss on both sides. But in this case, this is clearly not a radial nerve thing, and it's clearly not an ulnar nerve thing. Anybody know what that is? A median nerve thing. There's only three to choose from. So this guy has acute carpal tunnel syndrome. A carpal tunnel is a ligament that goes between your thumb and your small finger, and the nerves run through that so that when you bend your hand like that, it doesn't bowstring across the top to the bottom. And so if you pinch the nerve inside the carpal tunnel, it's going to give you sensory loss of the first three fingers. Only on the palm of your hand, not on the top. Because the radial nerve runs on the back of your hand, remember? And so when you pinch that, that's what gives you carpal tunnel. And this is acute, meaning it just happened today and it's getting worse. And this guy's not going to tolerate waiting around until tomorrow or the next day, especially with a major neurologic deficit. If it happened fast, if you fix it, it will recover fast. And so the operation is actually really easy. You make a little incision on the palm of the hand. There's even a crease in your hand that shows you where to put it. You start at the crease where the wrist flexes over, and you end right where the thumb goes across the palm, right there. And that's where the carpal tunnel is. And you find the carpal tunnel, it's real easy to find because it's the neck structure under the fat. And you just cut that without cutting the nerve. And so here's a picture of this guy who had a hematoma in his carpal tunnel. And now you can see that's opened up and he has a compression of that nerve. When you take the pressure off, it heals up and it goes away. And you'll be out of work for 3 weeks, but back laying carpet before you know it. Okay, so that's it. Here's a summary of what I talked about. Be happy to answer any questions you might have. Yeah.
Thank you for coming and speaking tonight. So you said you never imagined yourself going into the military.
And so was that something to fund for medical school? And then once you got to the military, what would you say is the main thing that you gained from it that helped you as a minister?
Well, most of my decision to go in the military was financial because I needed the funding. I liked watching MASH, but I had no idea what it was all about. I wish that I had spoken with some people that were in the military because a lot of soldiers and veterans all around you have a lot of insight about that. But I actually found that it was kind of fun to be in ROTC. We were doing all that hoo-ha stuff, running around, calling cadence and all that crap. And it was a good experience, a great exercise in leadership. It actually helped you quite a bit as a medical student because as a pre-med, because when you demonstrate that you can be a battalion commander for 600 people, they realize that you're a leader among your peers. So I think that was probably the biggest thing. And then when I got into the Army, you're part of a big machine. And the Army has a lot of training in leadership. So you start as a lieutenant, you become a first lieutenant, then you become a captain, then you become a major and a lieutenant colonel, and you get to do more and more. When I went to Iraq in 2003, I was the #2. But then when I went back in 2006 during the surge, I was the #1. So I was the theater neurosurgeon making the policy in neurosurgery for the Iraq war. It was a great experience. And you know, the sort of thing that I would never have done if I was just Joe Schmo neurosurgeon in Waco, Texas. Any other questions? Yeah. It's interesting because if you want to be a hand specialist, you can actually do it one of 3 ways. One way is to become a neurosurgeon where we do some peripheral nerve surgery, and it's actually not the best way to do that. But you can deal with all kinds of nerve stuff because they teach us how to fix nerves. If you cut a nerve or if you injure a nerve or whatever, no matter where it is. But if you want to be a good hand surgeon, you're going to either do orthopedic surgery or you're going to do plastic surgery and then another fellowship. So let's say you want to become a plastic hand specialist. You're going to do general surgery residence. And then after that, you're going to do a plastics fellowship, which could be as many as, or a residency, which could be 2 to 4 years. And then you're going to do 2 more years after that. So it's a long haul. But the cool thing about being a plastic surgeon is you don't have to limit yourself to hand surgery. You can also do all the other stuff. So hand surgeons, I think probably the very best hand surgeons are the plastics guys because they have so much training. But like, who wants to be 36 when they get their first paycheck? That's no good. Yeah. I'm really sorry, I can't hear you. Balancing work and life as a neurosurgeon. It's very challenging because your spouse, your kids, your family, they really realize that you're all in for the work. And it's a very rewarding field because you get to do some hot shot stuff. And you get to do some crazy operations under microscopes and minimally invasive surgery and all this kind of stuff. But my wife and my kids know that it's pretty unreliable. I'm a pretty unreliable parent. And so you have to have a spouse that's very understanding, willing to sort of run the show. They're going to run the business at home, and then you're going to run the business in the office. And, I think there are ways, like the job I have now, it's much more relaxed because we don't do a lot of trauma anymore. And so my call is pretty light. And, there are ways in neurosurgery you can back down academics. You can let the residents do all the work and go home. So, I mean, there are a lot of ways to make that all work. But when you're choosing your field, what I would recommend is pick the system that you really love. Do you really love the stool and the bowels? I don't know about that. Do you really love women's surgery? Do you really love the heart and lungs, that kind of stuff? Once you pick your system, then you're going to decide, am I going to be a surgeon for the lungs or am I going to be a medical doctor for the lungs, pulmonology versus CT surgery, that kind of business. I think I went over.
No, you're perfect.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So much for coming tonight. Megan's gonna go ahead and put a QR code out for you guys. This is how you're gonna get your attendance. Make sure that you're only stating this code if you came into the, and sat down or participated within the first 10 minutes of the meeting starting.